So the session here is all about sharing what, reflecting on what we've been hearing for the last 3 days. So I just wanted, this is really to the participants in the room, just want you to be ready. If you like to have, if you like to share any reflection, you want to put in any wish list in terms of what you'd like to see, how you imagine, what you imagine for small-scale fisheries of Europe, then we could give you the microphone. Okay, so don't be shy. All right. Well, we have now people in the room. I'm not sure whether they can hear me. Evan, can you let me know whether people can hear me yet?
We can hear you. Yes.
Ah, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, I mean, I think there's still quite a lot of people in the room. I don't know why I got the impression that, I'm just going to be speaking to empty chairs here, but this is great. And do we have people on the stage? These are our organizing committee members who've been working really hard, weeks, months, weeks, days, seconds before the sessions, and put on a wonderful show for us.
So we moved everybody up closer to the front, but nobody yet is on the dais.
Right. Okay. So, just find them and put them.
Could we have the panelists please go up to the front?
If you can. This
please.
Is Jose,
Thank you.
Milena, Katia. Brice is already joining virtually here, and Brice will be the first. Brian, yes, thank you for standing up and working towards that. And of course, we would, this is just to get things started, right? We would soon go to you. So, microphone is everywhere. I mean, this is a fantastic Congress. Thank you again, Alicia and Matthew and MCAST. The facility is great, and the tech team and all the support from the ministry. And this cannot happen without that, right? Okay, so now can I see the stage so that we know who's there? Okay, excellent. Is that everybody? Nice. Good mixture of gender to start with. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I have agreed now with Alicia that we should end at 5, which means that we would have just just about an hour to do this, which I think it's good. It's not so bad, and we do have participants online. So again, for everybody. We're going to let the people in front of you and Brice say a few words first. And then we also have joining, there should be a couple more people joining online, but as part of the organizing committee, but we'll go there later once I see them. Brice, would you like to kickstart? What do you think? Your reflection for the last 3 days, what you like to put on the table in terms of what we should be imagining, thinking, working towards for small-scale fisheries of Europe? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Ratana. So the first thing is that this Congress was very exciting, very interesting. So thank you all for this, all the contributors and so on. So I hope that the time will go very fast until the next edition. Okay. Now I have just some elements to bring you, mainly in perspective with Imagine SSF in all SDGs. So the things I have in mind is that the range of contributions to the SDGs is very large, as you know. We already knew that, but generally we have pain to be more specific. So this is probably why we need to zoom out in space and time to get a bigger picture of these multiple contributions. The presentations also remind us that there are rarely ready-to-use solutions on the table. Rather, solutions emerge from participations, partnerships. So this is not new again, but this is important and need constant improvements and attention. Regarding more specifically the session about SDG, there are maybe two keywords I keep from the presentations. The first one is technology, which could be associated with knowledge. We had a lot of presentation during the session and overall during the Congress about these issues. And I think it's very important because it could be a very good lever to foster, to improve the different things around small-scale fisheries. The second word is diversification. We heard a lot about this. Diversification is probably something very important to keep in mind when speaking about small-scale fisheries. And this is probably the case because it is a way to improve resilience in fishing communities and in family units as well. So I think we have to cultivate diversification, and this is probably the way to find some more bottom-up solutions, tailor-made solutions for every communities around the world and in Europe in this case. Beyond the words of SDGs overall, I've also heard stories of real people. And I think that's this is very important to get to have this in mind, because when we are talking about goals, targets, measures, and so on, there are real people behind this. And it should be very important for us to keep that. So, yeah, again, I think that we don't have any concrete solution to propose now for this, but I think we have made some progress during this meeting in terms of talking together, exchanging ideas, cross-cutting ideas between the different groups of interest and peoples and so on. So I think this is very important, and so it's done.
Thank you. Thank you, Brice. Maybe we just reverse the order, right? So that because Brice is basically speaking from the final plenary we just saw. So why don't we go with Christina? So that way we can just, kind of like go 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, please, Christina.
Hello. Okay. Unexpected, but thank you. Okay. I'll get it over. So it's good to be the first, so I can say the stuff instead of being the last. Oh, yes, second. So first here in the room.
I know, and I started to see how Milena is not very happy, but look, you can handle that. So go ahead, Christina.
Thank you. First, I would just like Brice did. I would like to thank all my panelists in the small-scale fisheries centric governance and everybody that has participated in the governance debate. Messages to take home. We covered a lot of issues in the small-scale fisheries centric panel related to injustices in the small-scale fisheries system, governance. How do we move governments, small-scale fisheries from periphery to the center of the government system in Europe? And when we saw some examples of how it's being done in the Med. There was also a bit of talk that was a bit of a different topic about the need to bridge this divide between ocean science and ocean literacy in order to influence decision making. That was interesting because it's something we don't tend to talk so much about. And a few other points in a kind of a quick summary that I thought were messages to take home. To focus on the complication of what constitutes fisheries-dependent communities and what is small-scale fisheries in Europe. That's something maybe that there is a need to look at it again. The fact that several panelists and also people in the public mention that the value of small-scale fisheries is well acknowledged by most member states. However, despite this, many member states, despite the commitments that the EU has to small-scale fisheries, and many member states also have those commitments, things have not changed very much, and the small-scale fisheries are still a bit out of the governance system. There are problems related to national EU level governance. How can we enable democratic participation? And all of this, despite the fact that the common fisheries policy was reformed 9 years ago, and the issue of improving governance, the good governance, was a very important issue when on the last reform. This is a bit of a positive message. This is a time to change. We already know small-scale fisheries are important. Now it's time for action, like Marta said. I like that sentence a lot. And the fact that 2022 is a very important year, for the fact that it's the year that the EU is reflecting on the implementation of the common fisheries policy. So maybe this is the time that we can put some policy brief or some document out from this event and maybe have the attention of the Commission. And also it is YAFA, so everyone, the International Year for Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture. So the entire world has the eyes on is looking at small-scale fisheries. So it does mean that maybe an interesting message can come out of here and can be listened to. In order to imagine small-scale fisheries-centric governance, the key messages are: we need to work together, we need to build strong organizations, bring producers and consumers together, increase co-management and participatory approaches, recognize the important role of women and target issues around generational shifts, promote real action, improve science policy interface, change the legal framework for co-management in Europe. This is crucial because there is no legal framework for it. So without it, we can't do it. And the work on issues of financing participatory approaches, because without money, no one can go to the IC's meetings and no one can go to Brussels as well. We need to, there was also a bit of mention, I think it's important to improve fishing opportunities and market access for small-scale fisheries. And we need, and to finish, we need to always remember that small-scale fisheries are not starting from the same point and in terms of EU governance. So we should be talking about equity and not equality for a sustainable governance system of fisheries in Europe with the participation of small-scale fisheries. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for the summary and also for a very long list of action, a list that could become action items, of course. Very good. Okay. Brian? Yes.
Hello.
Share with us, please, what your thought on what you heard at the low impact session and also your wish list or action list.
Yeah, well, I think the message came across loud and clear in the small scale fisheries, imagining low impact fishing, that if we're still imagining, then we might as well pack up and go home. We're beyond imagining, we need action. We heard from Jerry Percy, we had a panel, and to me it's quite clear from the panel that small scale, low impact fishing, it's a strategy, people are doing it, it's not an absolute that you can come with a measuring tape to a fishing port, measure the boat, measure the gear and say, that is low impact. You've got to talk to the fishermen because it's a whole strategy. And it's related to the environment, it's related to the season, it's related to whether or not there are fish in the sea when they come, it's related to earning a decent living, not making a killing. So all of these aspects go into it. It's small scale fishing, low impact fishing was a cross-cutting theme. It wasn't just that session. So we saw that the common fishing policy makes a lot of mention of low impact fishing and small scale fishing. But the laws we have are designed to fail. They're not fit for purpose. They don't work. It's a stitch up. Even the European Commission presents its data in a way which gives a false impression. And I heard behind the scenes that in France, they deliberately manipulate the data in order to give a false impression that small-scale fishing is in fact having a greater impact than it really is. And in the case of Article 17, it took 3 years for the law to be tried in a French court and to be found not fit for purpose, and then the government can appeal, and you don't even know what grounds the government is appealing on, and still there is no justice. So we don't just need equity or equality, we need justice. Low impact fishing is a good strategy. Small scale fishers, 50% of the employment at sea, 70% of the fleet, they have a just cause to earn their livelihood, and this is simply not being respected by the laws. We have a triangular relationship of the industry, the politicians, and the administration all lining up to undermine small-scale fishing. So I think we have to go beyond imagining, we need action. And one of the points of action that came out of the UNOC, the United Nations Oceans Conference, was a group of fishers from across the world with a call for action. So at LIFE, what we're planning to do is have a call for action on the CFP to say it's high time for action now, that if you don't create the right enabling environment so that small-scale, low-impact fishing can go ahead, then it's going to be lost. I mean, we're living in a time of extreme change, of extreme pressure, of fuel prices which are making fishing unsustainable. And at the same time, we have laws which are simply breaking the spirit, breaking the ability of small-scale, low-impact fishers to go and earn their living. So yeah, we need change, we need action, we need to get beyond imagining. Those are my take-home messages. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian, for that. Yeah, life has been absolutely crucial and to be active in this space, and I think that's wonderful to see. Jose, what's your thought on the subsidies?
Thank you, Ratana. Well, today I had been thinking on subsidies and taking into account some of the comments that I received in the session, and after the session from different participants. And I think that we need to recognize the diversity in small-scale fisheries, the diversity in fisheries in general in Europe, and how this diversity needs to be recognized. We have been talking, for instance, about POs, producer organizations. In most of Europe, these POs are very far from the small-scale fisheries, but we can find some POs that are just built from a small-scale fisheries, and we need to recognize this diversity. The challenge is to make this example available and extend this model to other countries, and that's is not always easy. In Spain, for instance, these POs linked to a small-scale fishery have been born because we had cofradías. And in other countries without this strong fisher organization, making POs linked to the small-scale fisheries sector is more difficult. So we need to take into account the diversity of the European scenario to understand how subsidies can be used one way or the other. In general, we know very little about how these things are used. I was just checking how many papers about POs, about producer organizations have been published about their financing and so on, and there are very few, if any. So there is a huge lack of knowledge about how this relevant tool for improving collective action in fisheries in Europe is being, in fact, in reality, used. We know that in many cases they are built against small-scale fishery or taking into account very little small-scale fishery. But we have also evidence of that in some cases they are built by and for small-scale fisheries. We need a better analysis of that. We need to improve our knowledge of how subsidies are being used. We know that these general trends, but we need to learn also for the good cases, and we can find some of them. And this situation, this different use of subsidies, this differential role on how small-scale fisheries can get organized in different countries, has much to do with supranational but also national policies. Too frequently are the member states, when we talk about the European Union, those who are responsible for most of the policy that impact directly on small-scale fisheries. Working on our book about small-scale fisheries in the previous years, we found something that is not directly written in the book, but something that inspires some of our thinkers about the case, is that in some countries, in some member states, it looked that the policy was directly focused on how to get rid of small-scale fisheries. That focus can explain some of the current situation of small-scale fisheries in these countries. Sebastian Linke showed some of these perspectives, analyzing the case of Sweden, and I think there are other good examples that may explain similar scenarios. In this context, collective action in fisheries is a key element. To imagine a better future for small-scale fisheries, we need to think in a future that is also somehow linked on an improved collective action from the fisheries sector. But collective action through producer organization, through cofradías, through fisher organization is not easy to achieve, because it implies usually cost. The cost of collective action are relevant to be taken into account. And from the very early theoretical insights on collective action in the 80s, this element of the cost of collective action should be highlighted and need to be taken into account. The role of public policies, the role of in improving the capacity of the member states, of the multinational institutions to help this collective action to happen is something that needs to be taken into account. We have been commenting how perhaps a new model of POs, of producer organizations, that complement the actual model in those cases where the actual producer organization have been built without taking into account small-scale fisheries could be a good idea, perhaps. This is not easy, of course, to change the big trends of subsidies. Some elements are barely needed. We need leadership in the fisheries sector. We need a fisheries sector that can work together, trying to overcome these challenges. We need a small-scale fisheries sector that can work together without fighting themselves. And that's not always easy. In the Canary Islands, we have a fisheries sector that is mostly small scale, and they are losing a lot of time fighting themselves without getting a unified voice to get their demands. We need leadership in academia trying to overcome and to highlight these aspects of the reality that we know very little. Why we don't know almost anything about how all the funding, all the subsidies directed to POs has been used in Europe in the last years. There is very little evidence about that, and there is very little evidence. There is very little research about how subsidies in general are being used in the small-scale fisheries sector. So in academia, we need to refocus some of our priorities to get a better portrait of what is happening in our continent. So we can imagine a situation where the role of the market, the role of the small-scale fishery in the market, the subsidies that help to create and enhance the role of small-scale fisheries in this sector helps to reduce the burden for the renewal of the fishers, of the people who depends on this sector directly and indirectly. So that's some of the comments, the initial comments on the sector.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jose. Good that you left something for Katia and Milena. So we'll go to Katia next. Gender.
Gender. Imagine gender and equality in fisheries. Freedom to choose. For women, women must have the freedom to choose to do what they want to do. They can be fishers, or they can be scientists, or and get the same equal rights like male. I think it's what Sandrine said somewhere. Because finally we speak about women in fisheries, but we know that some women scientists, they have more precarious job, they have a lot of inegalities, face a lot of inegalities also. And my young colleague here in the room, I am sure they are in this situation. Anyway, but at least in fisheries we have one positive, because equal jobs means equal salary, because we apply the share system in countries where we apply the share system. This is another story. We don't know if in all EU countries we have the share system, and I am afraid that we apply the share system to pay our foreigner crew on board. They are men. So at least women in this case, they are more lucky because they have share salary. Anyway, then I was thinking just to start imagine gender and equality fisheries means have more modern boats, for example, in harvesting, that with toilets, with showers, with ergonomic technology on board, facilitate the work for men and women finally, and maybe attract more young people, because young people don't want to go at sea when the boats are not so comfortable. Okay, after this imagine, we can just observe that the recent year we hear more and more about gender and equality on the public space. We can compare in the past. I think Cornelia here, I remember that in the past, only few people that were working about gender in fisheries. And I was ready to tell gender in fisheries means women for women, but there are some men in the room that they already wrote or they work for gender and equality, so I cannot tell that. But what we observe, and that came from the previous session on SDGs, is that finally all the projects they were run by women, and it were for women. And in our case, I mean, maybe the situation is not different, but in our case, we are only few women working for women. even in European Union. Some people in the room, they were surprised to look only women, but I just want to ask, when there is only men in everywhere, even in our parliaments and so on, and we need to apply the positive discrimination to become member of parliaments, how then we can have the equality. Anyway, it was a comment in the room why women, they are in the room, but men are not, they are welcome. If they don't come, they don't come. Finally, this last interest about gender, because all call of proposals, everything are calling for gender equality. So it's a way for example, in my case, European Union probably to fulfill their commitment towards international agreements. So we have to work a lot about stereotypes, preventing women to be on fishing boats. I was also quite surprised on how political power in all the countries use in negative way the women to apply some their own objectives. And here I will take, for example, the example, because I found this example quite interesting, and I was in a session this morning speaking also about this issue. In European countries, Atlantic mainly, but in Mediterranean also, we have this phenomenon of seaweed cast on the shore, and in my country, in my region, in Brittany, where I am living, municipalities have spent money and huge amount of money to clean the beaches, because it's a problem on human health. It's a public health problem, because we know that some horses die in France, some human beings have problem. We have the same problem in Martinique and Guadeloupe with the sargasso. But I was surprised to hear that the Galicia government asked shellfish harvester to clean the beach, and me for free. But I don't for free when I compare how much we spend in France for that, for free, and with the argument that Cofradiers has a commitment signed 200 years ago that they have to take care of the beach. They saying that in the 18, but why only women? Why they don't ask also to men? Men doesn't go. So I come to your side because yes, we need to act. It's a matter of action. I mean, that I was really so surprised to hear that, because I saw the women. As soon as they gather all the seaweed, nobody come to take them. They just on the beach. I hear the same for in Conil, in Andalusia. They clean the beach. Okay. Women, they organize themselves, some through subsidies, some other without subsidies. The organization of women was coming from, it was a response to fisheries crisis in many of the countries, particularly in France, in Ireland, in Scotland, and so on. Then we have the other organizations, but they organize themselves. Okay, they need more training to be more empowered and use their capacity to think and act. Mm-hmm. Just yesterday evening discussion with the fisher women, they were on here. None of them knew what is the Advisory Council in Europe. Why? because advisories, the people, organization going to advisory council are official organization recognized by the states because they have to give the authorization to us to be part of the advisory council. So women didn't know what it is. So this means that our objectives are far away to be achieved on gender equality. So that's all. And I want just to make an announcement that some young and old scientists working on gender, they decided that they will publish an e-book with small stories again. We have to document that women are existing, they do something. It will be a TPTI publication. It's more work for Vesna there. But the decision, it was taken this afternoon because all these young scientists, they are in really precarious conditions, so they don't want to commit that they will do this type of application. Now, the old scientists like me, they don't want to commit because they think to be retired. So that's all.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we definitely are happy to hear that news. I know that we've been talking about it. So thank you. And we look forward to working with you on a publication. You know, ebook publication is actually a very nice thing to do in this case because it really gets to the readers and can really affect change. Might not get your tenure and promotion or better salary, but, well, you never know about better salary, but definitely will get you famous. Okay. Milena, go ahead, please.
Okay. I am responsible for the Blue Justice. Thank you for that. It's not so easy. In our plenary, we discussed about the role of images and how different images is not so trivial, and how we can deal with all these different images, narratives, and values and visions about small-scale fisheries. Maybe we could think that all these commitments to support small-scale fisheries on paper do not really come into action because it could be differently interpreted by different actors who have different images, because we can be here discussing on how important is small-scale fisheries, but in other fora, there could be also, there are for sure discussions on how to get rid of small-scale fisheries, or especially, I have been in discussions about economists, how they vision the disappearance of small-scale fisheries, where we are discussing here the opposite. So how can we enter a conversation with these other important, not just stakeholders, but researchers as well? How do we deal with different values, with different measurements, with different ideas on how do we want to live, actually? How do we imagine a nice living for all of us? So that's one of the topics that arrived from our panel. And it was not only images, but also narratives and language. How do we get to new language, new concepts? Like, for example, blue justice, blue fear. How do we, there was another topic that was debated, blue fear comes from uncertain future, and how do we work to not wait until things happen, like blue economy just happened, but how can we work proactively instead of reactively? How can we develop methods to foresee the challenges that will come? and not just always reacting when we have already blue economy implemented and with lots of funds and things like that. So we need to start imagining how do we change this acting after and not before. Knowledge, of course, that was another topic. We need always more knowledge, but maybe at this point, more than getting more knowledge, maybe also develop some ways on how to use that knowledge and bring it to the people who has the power to act. So, yeah, which knowledge is used and how to bring it to power, not just collecting and collecting and collecting. Blue Justice has had a lot to do also with large-scale fisheries and squeezing many other industries, squeezing the small-scale fisheries. And we are, or at least I am imagining that, I can easily imagine that in Sweden in a few years there won't be a small-scale fisheries. And I wonder if we can also imagine that in, I don't know, at some point there won't be large-scale fisheries. I wonder if we are at this point to say we don't want large-scale fisheries. And that's it, if we can start imagining that. And the last thing, I think it was, we all liked the impressive presentation of Sebastian about Sweden. And I just want to add to that that was a product of a transdisciplinary research where we asked people working with fishermen, what do you want to know? And they said, we want to know why the fishermen are not joining producer organizations. And that's how things started. So just to remind us, we haven't been talking on transdisciplinary research, but just wanted to emphasize that that's very important, as at least for us researchers. I don't know how many researchers we are, but yeah, I think that was my imagining.
That's great.
My list of imaginations. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, thank you. We have another member of the International Steering Committee joining online. That would be that is Pekka. So Pekka, go ahead. You've been joining many sessions and also help organize this Congress. We would like to hear your thought and reflection on this. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Ratana. I have been very, very happy to follow the discussions and great presentations in the Congress. I haven't been able to listen to all, but they have been very, very interesting and relevant to hear even from the distance here from Finland. I don't have a predefined topic, so I can choose it. So I would like to say a few words about the question of this recruitment of young fishers and the generational shift, which was mentioned also today. But there was also a working group on Monday about this topic, and we learned that the fisheries local action groups flags have started to provide important local support to enhance the recruitment issue. And these opportunities and the flags are an important opportunity in general, as Sebastian Linke also mentioned today. And they contribute to better awareness of small-scale fisheries in general and its benefits and possibilities, and the image of the small-scale fisheries. Well, what would be the way forward? And I suppose there should be a real turn towards more local and more participatory governance. And for example, this flag system in Finland, it's only 5% of the total of the funding, EU funding budget. So there should be a change in this concrete issue. There should be a larger share towards this kind of local and more co-management type of approaches. Another issue is that not to talk about the support, but talk about how could fisheries and environmental governance actions contribute to opening better opportunities for small-scale fisheries rather than narrow and restrict as they tend to do in the past and nowadays. And lastly, I'd like to highlight that in these struggles, which are power struggles and struggles of knowledge also, so there should be more emphasis on the benefits and positive effects of the small-scale fisheries, the cultural and ecological positive effects, economic, social, and health effects of this kind of issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And okay, so we have maybe about 20 minutes left here in the session. If you, audience in the room, I can't see, but maybe we could just, if you have any questions, and also this applies to our online participants, if you have any questions and comments, we are now opening the floor to everyone. I have asked, go ahead.
The question that we need to...
That's Sven, right?
Yeah, that's Sven.
Okay.
The question that we need to have a good answer to is why small-scale fisheries? And how do we argue for the survival of small-scale fisheries? You can argue that small-scale fisheries make an important contribution to society, providing food, jobs, etc. You can argue that we need to maintain small-scale fisheries because they have a low impact, environmental impact, and that is the reason why we should maintain their existence. But I would say that, you know, those are strategies in a public discourse to try to convince policymakers that it is a good idea to maintain them. Brian called it strategies. But that is a strategy that is effective only insofar that you can prove it, right? And the burden of proof rests on you. I'm not sure, there is no doubt in my mind that we can prove it, but that it is we who have to prove it. If you, as on the other hand, do what the small-scale fisheries guidelines do, argue from a from a human rights perspective, you don't need to prove it. Those that will take it away from you are the ones who have to prove that you don't have these basic rights. So I'm arguing that the strategy for life and for the strategy that Brice talked about, mentioning their contribution, cannot be the default position. The default position must be those things that we take for granted that are self-evident. And those are, that is an argumentation that is fundamentally rooted in human rights. People in small-scale fisheries have a right to be who they are. They have a right to do what they do. They have a right to be who they are. they have a right to a dignified life. They have a right to choose a life as they would like to live it. And it goes therefore also without saying that they have a right to be part of a governance process that leads to a policy and decision-making that affects their ability to lead the life that they have to do. So it is on these latter things, that must be our default position. And not these other things, which are important and deserve to be argued and etc. But they are effective only insofar that you have the proof, and that burden of proof rests on you.
Okay, so would the question be then about how to recognize, right, those rights, or how to make government and others recognize those rights?
Yeah, and that is what the SSF guidelines do, and what the governments have accepted. Of course, they must accept it. No one could disagree with these rights. There were some countries that tried to disagree with the rights of women, of equity, but they were taken down. So that's I think that's the default position.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, others, anybody else?
Next we have Prateep.
Prateep, go ahead, please. I haven't heard much from you, so good that
thank you.
I'm
an observer here. I think, many of the discussions, or some of the discussions kind of, alluded us to the core question about the scale. There was some reference to the nomenclature of whether it is small-scale fisheries and, how do you really address it? One of the ways to understand that is much of the struggles that we hear and ways of articulating the problems and issues and the ways forward within small-scale fisheries is about its diversity. Therefore, any suggestions that we come up with needs to kind of address that question of diversity. The idea is not to collapse all of these diversities into one unit of analysis or one thing that can be addressed because it attracts policy, but how can policy be made and other implementation and actions can be taken that really addresses the question of diversity. Otherwise, we're going to have one size fits all kind of approach, which would be dangerous for small scale fisheries itself. Despite we calling it small scale fisheries, it is actually multi scale fisheries. It is not small scale always. It's not about large and small, but it is in what domain, in what contexts, these fisheries exist, and therefore their struggles could be very different, and therefore their aspirations could be very different. So my whole question and the point I want to make here is, how can we come up with some final points out of this conference which really values the diversity and therefore suggestions to to policy, to have better policy action and other things, keeping the diversity in sight. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that. And I think we have heard a lot of points, the same point being made, in people would like to see that people are able to maintain their diversity, even continue to diversify their livelihoods or way of fishing, and also to make sure that governance is happening, right, based in that context with the local communities making decisions, defining what small-scale fisheries are and making decisions about their own fisheries, which is part of that good subsidiarity principle that the EU already is included in the CFP. So it's just a matter of are they being serious about this, or is there a mechanism to make that happen? Okay, other points,
We have Marta who would like to say something.
Go ahead, Marta, please.
Hello, do you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you. Now, I just wanted to take on this last point and also what's been discussed before. I think now we are in a at least in Europe, now we're discussing SSF in Europe, and now there's this process of the discussion of the CFP implementation, and there's quite a bit of a momentum that is quite a historic momentum that we could try to change, governance and things somehow. And from Live, we were planning to do this call for action to call on the needs and the changes that we want to be seen and so on. But I think we have discussed many things here together, and maybe even the conclusions, or we could do the call for action together in a way that it has more weight. It's not only Live and the fishers themselves alone calling for these fish changes, and it could be like something that we could enhance more people into it, to give it more weight and really make this change to happen somehow. I don't know if that's a possibility. It's kind of a proposal that I launch here.
No, this is great. I mean, we have been working with many civil society organizations and other fishers organizations to support any of these kind of message and campaign even, right? Call to actions are definitely great. So, at least from TBTI perspective, right? Somebody already suggested that we should come up with some kind of policy brief or community brief or any kind of briefing from these, right? So definitely we could join effort here and at least help you to promote the message and the call for actions if you come up with it. Okay, thank you for that, Martha. Okay, so are there other questions? I mean, the audience online, you have been really quiet.
For now, Svein would like to respond.
Svein would you like, okay, please, Svein, please respond.
There was one comment, I don't remember who made it, but it's about this image and what are we here for? What is this in this conference about? For me, it has been an opportunity to reaffirm and to consolidate and even celebrate the image that we have about small-scale fisheries. There is nothing wrong with our image of small-scale fisheries. It's fair, it's about justice, it's about equity, it's about all those things that we cherish. The problem is not here. The problem is out there. All the other images that all flows around in governments and in industries and about what small-scale fisheries are. And what is important for us is to sort of make what we can to break into those images and point to where those and in what sense those images are flawed. That was the whole idea of my first intervention. There are so many ideas and images out there that has led to policies that have hurt small-scale fisheries, and that is perhaps also the reasons why we are here. So what we are providing here is an alternative images, which we hope will carry enough weight to challenge and even dismantle those images that are out there and which today are sort of governing the current governing systems in small-scale fisheries.
Thank you for that. You have one comment from the audience here. Not the audience, our virtual participants. Maria Sarinen, would you like to say it, or would you want me to just say it for you? Basically, yeah, well, it's really that, isn't it? I mean, we are talking about us, among us, almost like speech, what do you call? Preach to the choir or something of that sort, right? So we already believe in, we need to have small-scale fisheries. This is our image for small-scale fisheries. We have our strategies, we have our plan. But then there would be other people outside of this room or, out there who actually, as we see the sea full of small-scale fisheries, they see the sea void of small-scale fisheries. So there's a little bit of that contradiction, right? There's a little bit of that conflicting images or not images that are not compatible. So Sven used the word, I don't know, breaking into the flaw image, I guess. I guess everybody would need, we need to put some understanding about how to really how to really mainstream or streamline our images about small-scale fisheries into the public discourse. And I guess that is part of what people are saying here about a collective action, which would lead to that, right? So it's a lot of work to be done for sure to break that, kind of silos or silence. Okay, thank you, Maria, for that. Let me just read what Maria said properly. Basically, she said, great presentations and great speeches, everyone. Now you should make these common knowledge because the majority of people know absolutely nothing about these problems. I mean, people outside of this room, of course. Here we know everything, maybe too much. Anyway, okay, other people. Do we have other comments?
Yes, we have a question or comment from Maria that's here.
Nalu. Okay, very good. Let's go there. Thank you.
Prova. Yes, I really liked, well, thank you all. First of all, thank you everybody for 3 days of great conversations. My name is Maria Battaglia, and I have a question about blue fear. So we talked about blue fear a lot, and fear is definitely a feeling that really resonates with me, because when I think about all these problems, I fear for the future. But fear is also an emotion that when I talk with small-scale fishers didn't really come out. So I spent 3 months in the field and I was talking to a lot of fishers, and they never said, I'm scared for the future or I'm scared for what's about to come. And I really thought about that and I asked myself, why? And then today we talked about blue fear again, and we talked about uncertainty. So we fear things that we don't know. And then I thought that maybe fishers don't fear the future because they are already certain about what the future looks like. And so if we put fishers at the center of our conversation, then we also have to take into account that at least the ones I talk to, I don't know what everybody's experience is, are certain about the future and are certain that there is no future for small-scale fishing. So when we talk about blue fear, I want to think about who is fearing the future. And in my experience, is not the fishers. I'm not sure about what others people experience it is. Thank you.
Can I just get some clarification there, Maria? Are you saying that fishers are not afraid of the future because they know there is no future for them?
Well, in my experience, yes. So just as a clear, it's really
so they are very certain, basically, that there is no future for them, and that's why they have no fear. Well, I don't know about that. I'm just trying to think, follow your line of thinking here. I think small-scale fisheries, to me, they are fearful as opposed to fearful. They are very courageous and they are actually ready to take on, whatever comes at them. But that might be my own imagination too. So anyone would like to respond or to comment on that? Brian, go ahead, please.
Thanks very much. Yes, I think it's a very good point. And I think you put your finger on it, Ratana, when you said fishers are courageous. That's what keeps them going. I mean, you heard from the panel yesterday where each in turn explained what they do, that they did this because they felt it was the right thing to do, because they felt they needed to think about the future, that they didn't want to earn a killing, that they wanted to earn enough to feed their families. They were limiting their efforts. And we also heard that this burden of proof that you talk about, Sven, I don't think it's a burden of proof. I think it's a burden on the right system, which is failing the fishers. We have a right system in Europe, which is not fit for purpose. We have laws which are designed to fail the small-scale fishers. We've taken the law to court. The court has decided that the law is not fit for purpose. The government appeals. Justice is delayed. Justice is denied again and again. The fishermen still go to sea. They're courageous. They believe in what they're doing. They may not be fearful for the future because they say, well, if there is no future, there's no future. But now we're going to go out there and we're going to fish and we're going to practice. We're going to put into practice our worldview, which is to fish in a low impact way. And as you say, you need to be able to measure that to prove that you're doing it. But as far as the fishers are concerned, they don't care if some academics or some lawyers or some administrators don't believe them, because they feel that what they're doing is right. Time and time again, you will hear from fishers who are arrested coming into port because there's some little bit of some rule that they've broken. Maybe they've gone out to sea too far. Maybe they have a couple of fish on board that they shouldn't have. Maybe the stability of the boat doesn't comply with the standards. Time and time again, super trawlers come in. Their catches are not checked. The vessels are not checked. So justice is not for everybody. There's one law for the big guys. There are other laws which are manipulated and not used properly for the small guys. So it's unfair. So how can you say the burden of proof is on the fishers to prove that they're right when the justice system is failing them? The right system is failing them. They're courageous. They're going on despite knowing that this system is not fit for purpose. That's the courage that they have. Thank you.
What I said. That was not, what I said. There's no doubt in my mind that fishers know what they're doing and why they're doing it, and that they are courageous and all that. The question is, this is something that government raised this question. Policymakers raised this question: why small-scale fisheries? And how do you argue? How do you prove that their existence is legitimate? You can't prove it by pointing to their contribution to food security or whatever. Or you can make an argument about their low impact, etc. That's all fine. Do it for all it's worth, but that cannot be the default position, because the burden rests on you. You can argue, for instance, that small-scale fisheries are more efficient with regard to fuel consumption, but you have to prove it. And I've been in a situation where that argument has been questioned. So you have to actually demonstrate that it is indeed so. And if you cannot do it, your argument is weakened, and that may have consequences for your ability to defend the existence of small-scale fisheries if you cannot prove that. So that is just my point. I say that the default position is the fact that people have right to be where they are and choose a life where they are. Cornelia argued that women's right is a human right. You don't need to prove that. You can argue that, but you don't need to prove it. And it should be argued, but anyone who would say that this is not the case, they have the burden of proof, not those who claim that women's rights are human rights. So I think the default position from which we argue about justice is the rights position.
Mm-hmm. Thank you again for reiterating that, Sven. And I do take your point. It is always the burden that is being put on us to trying to prove. But why should we prove anything when we already have the rights to exist? And this is just about resisting, perhaps, some of those forces out there. I mean, this is a bit about power, isn't it? I mean, there are people who want to change the status quo. I think that was mentioned before, right? And so therefore, they don't want to change the status quo. They prefer that things don't change. We, on the other hand, would need to look for ways to change, whether it's an images, whether it's a narratives, the legal system, to make it work better for small-scale fisheries. But at the same time, let's not put all the burden of proof on small-scale fisheries. No matter how much we try, right? The number is going to be debated, right? You can really find that magic dollars figures to represent the values and contribution of small-scale fisheries. You know, economists have been trying to do that, and it's never win any argument because it's still not enough. But we don't need to go there. We should just be able to say small-scale fisheries have the rights to fish and rights to exist, and that should be that. And this debate about, well, but are they creating impact? Are they sustainable? Well, nobody is sustainable. Nobody creates no impact, right? So that's why low impact is indeed a good strategy, because when you think about it, right, people like to say, but there's so many boats, even if they're low impact, you add them all. But I argue actually that it's the other way around. So I have said that many times, right? Imagine the sea without, large boats and doing a really good job at letting the small-scale fisheries take care of the resources, being a steward of the resources, and contribute to the local food security and the local economy, and see whether that would make a better, really achieve sustainability or not. And of course, more women in doing that would also help, right, Katya? Okay, right. Other comments?
Can I say just something about what you said?
Sure.
Yes, they have the right to fish, but they don't have the right to overfish. And that's the image that many people have about small-scale fisheries.
And nobody has the right to overfish. And the people who overfish, exploitation of the fisheries in the world today, since we modernized and advanced our gear and technology, are pretty much, I think, you can say that both sectors contribute. I'm not saying that, but when we have a major collapse or major overexploitation, most of them are coming from industrial large-scale fisheries.
Yeah,
right?
but shall we put things in perspective a bit?
Mhm.
In Europe, 5% of the catch comes from small-scale fisheries.
Yeah.
1.5% of the fish coming onto the market comes from European small-scale fisheries. 0.01 gram of every kilogram we eat comes from small-scale fishing. So small-scale fishing in Europe is small when it comes to impact, because it's such a small amount. We did talk about specific cases where static gear is used in some environments. It can have a bigger impact of trawling. But when you come to prove your case with small-scale fishing, let's get away from generalities, because generalities are never going to prove the case for small-scale fishing. Small-scale fishers have to prove their case on a case-by-case basis. We've given a whole variety of characteristics, of attributes of small-scale fishing that they can provide this, what I would call the cream of the catch. This is the best quality fish coming onto the market. It's fresh, it's something that's being landed every day. It's not a huge amount of fish, but it does have a value, an economic value, a social value, a cultural value. If we're not going to value it, then we're going to lose it. It's a very, very small amount, but it's very important. If tourists come to fishing communities, they don't see fishing boats in the harbor, they don't see the kinds of activities that Seamus was talking about, why are they going to go there for their holidays? If they go to the local restaurant, what's on the menu? Tilapia, pangasius. What's the point of that? Salmon. I mean, this is the new world. This is the brave new world of the blue fair economy that we're coming to.
Thank you. And even in places where there are a lot more small-scale fisheries and many of the boats, I mean, I would still say, right, that they have their role to play, and everyone is responsible for the environmental degradation, and don't start looking at which sectors. I think, Evan, there are still more questions from the floor, correct?
Yes, and Prateep, I'm going to go to a few people that haven't had a chance to speak. First is Christian.
And we do, just to let you know, right? We will, well, Jose, Jose wants to say something as well. So we're going to let you say something after this, Jose. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the floor. I mean, first, I'd just like to thank you for organizing this. I've really learned a lot. I found it very stimulating and really rewarding. And then this latest discussion made me think of an anecdote when I met a civil servant from the Ministry of Environment, and we were talking about how he wanted the fishing fleet to look like. What would be Ministry of Environment's ideal? And his ideal was to have just one boat that would catch everything. And he didn't understand any of the socioeconomic impacts. It was this real fantasy idealism. And it made me think that, you know, we've had this real technocratic shift in terms of how we manage fisheries. You know, everything is supposed to be counted and measured. And yeah, in theory, that would be nice, but it doesn't work in reality. You know, we're managed by spreadsheets and models. And when we speak to scientists, you know, they say, well, the small scale fleet, it doesn't provide good enough data, you know, as if that 5% of landings would suddenly make their model work and would suddenly end overfishing and would suddenly lead to biomass growth. So I think for me, it comes down to the fact that what needs to happen in order to imagine or to have a better future. And that is stock growth. It is improvements in biodiversity. You know, those are the fundamentals which going into the future we depend on. You know, unless we have improvements and in terms of biomass, in terms of stock growth, in terms of age and size distribution, in terms of biodiversity, and those factors which will allow the small scale fleet to be successful in the future are out of our hands. You know, that it's actually not something that the small scale fleet can control on its own. So I think that has to be fundamentally the priority going forwards, is unless we improve the conditions at sea, you know, you can invest and have whatever you want. But I think that we can't lose sight of the fact that unless there's more fish, there won't be, you know, that has to be the basis of how we move forward. Sorry, that was more of a comment than a question, but thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much. So maybe the proof has to be, you know, how can we prove that small-scale fisheries can indeed contribute to biodiversity conservation? So we have more comments?
Yes, we have a comment from Paul.
So nobody wants to give up on this. This is great. We just keep going until we run out of energy. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, my first concern is in the Mediterranean, I said it before, our biggest challenge is the non-licensed vessels, that we have hundreds of thousands of them, fishing and selling the fish illegally in the markets, especially small-scale fish, real small-scale fishermen that sells their fish in the restaurants, are finding the market flooded from fish coming from this illegal, let's call it illegal fishing, because the boats are not licensed. So some of them, they say they are recreational and they find a lot of names, but still they are not allowed to sell the fish, but it's being sold in all countries and nothing is being done. So that's one of the main challenges that we're facing. And secondly, how can we say that we are catching and we are low impact on the society when we don't have any records of landings and nobody is controlling the small boats? Thank you.
Jose would like to say something from the panel.
Perfect. Jose, go ahead, please.
Jose, can you speak a little bit more into the mic?
Yes. Well, I think we have been touching some very interesting elements in the last conversations. I think we need to highlight the capacity the capacity of resist from the small-scale fishing communities to the adversities, to the problems. Sometimes we need to think on the different ways these fishing communities have developed to survive these challenges. In some cases, these challenges are related to a bad regulation. I know many cases about that. And now I know fishing gears that have been banned with no good reason, and that has made a big burden to the fishing community. And they have tried to respond to that. Sometimes not complying with the regulation. And I cannot blame on them because I think the regulation is bad. It has no good foundations. Is that no a good scientific reason to be like that? That means that we have a lot of work to be done. Demonstrate that these regulations are not adequate, are not good enough. So people try to survive with these burdens, with this regulation in a diversity of ways. Sometimes the problem comes from a bad control of how the fish circulate in the market, and that's make it easy that recreational fishers systematically fish more than they should and sell their catches illegally. And that's create an enormous burden for the survival of fishing communities, simply because when the market is overflooded with fishes, with catches that are not coming from the commercial sector, then all the activities of the small-scale fisheries are in trouble. In both cases, public administration have a big role, and we need to highlight that the fishery administration have to try to regulate adequately the market and try to regulate adequately the catches. And when both things work rather badly, when they are not capable to cope with these challenges from the administration point of view, from taking the role that they should have to control how the fish flow in the market and how the fish is catched at the sea, then we are in trouble. And for the scientists, we need to highlight how these challenges are creating a burden on fishing communities that they try to overcome, but it's so difficult for them that they are asking for help, and they are asking for scientific evidence to challenge how the administration are regulating these issues. So I think that means that we as scientists, we have something to do in this arena. It's not easy at all, because getting the evidence in this area sometimes is very difficult. But at least we need to highlight the shortcomings of the administration, how the regulation on how the control is not good enough. It's not adequate for the public good. That is one of the main goals of the public administration.
Thank you, Jose. We heard earlier when we are saying that fishers should be price maker as opposed to price taker. And I would now add, based on your comment here, that they also should be rules makers as opposed to rule takers. So they should really, really think carefully. And we, as you said, scientists have a role to play too. But this is about, again, collective action and, doing all the right things. Anybody else? Because I don't want to drag this on. If you don't have any other comments, there's still no comments from the audience, or no other comments from the audience, rather. Anybody else?
Prateep has something to add.
Prateep, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the discussion about courage and fear, and in any human being, all the human emotions are inherent, and they might come up, depending on the situation. So courage and fear are two emotions that everybody would show given the challenges, and the fishers are humans. What we have seen, I have seen in the small communities that I have worked, is more than courage and fear, fishers are realistic, fishers are more practical, because they live the life they live. Therefore, when they act on the challenges they face, it is more from the perspective of how they have understood and how practical they become given the challenges. So they know probably what is the future, and therefore design or think of responding to that. So it's not all about courage and fear. It is about realizing, living the life and the experiences, and therefore bring out their emotions in terms of responding to that in many ways. One of the metaphors that is pretty dominant on the east coast of India where I work is, when hunger gets to the stomach, we still have the power to fight back. And when people come out on the road and fight back, they're hungry, they're not cooking food, they're not fishing anymore, half of the family has migrated, but still they are out on the field, road to protest, to fight, and engage in social movements, and which is an ongoing process. I mean, if you look at those examples, it is not about courage and fear. It is about how people live their lives, and and stand on the fine line of hopes and desperation, but still don't give up. And that gives us enough hope to engage with our community collaborators in the fishing communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And part of these human rights is, of course, about human dignity, and therefore we would want to make sure that this is not out there because out of desperation, but really, again, going back to it is their inherent rights. Okay, and they should do that with dignity. I have nothing. I don't have anything. I don't believe there is anybody else. Is that the case, Evan?
That's correct.
All right, perfect. Well, it's time to wrap up anyway. Alicia, are you still in the room? Are you like to say something? And Matthew as well.
Hello. Yes, I'm still here. I've survived. No, I final words. I think I'm really grateful that you've all made it to Malta. I believe this is one of the very first international events that we have had for small-scale fisheries for some time now. I think the last one was in 2013, and it was regional. It wasn't even international. So we are really grateful that TBTI chose Malta to host this important Congress. As I said before during my speech, I believe that there are a lot of lessons to be learned, a lot of things to think over. Our dinner tonight and our breakfast tomorrow morning, there's a lot of food for thought. And I hope that the 5th World Small-Scale Fisheries Congress would bring some less fears and more opportunities for small-scale fishers. Well done, and thank you so much for coming to our island once again. Don't forget to go to Comino and Goto. Very beautiful. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Alicia. All right. Well, we have a lot to be thankful for, of course, because the Congress like this cannot happen just from one person in front of you and among you. In front of you are the steering committee. Many of them are joining online. Among you are all the people who are making it possible for the Congress to happen. Matthew, Vesna, really main people behind this. So another round of applause for Matthew and Vesna and their teams. Matthew, you want to say something? I now see that you have a microphone. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much again for the nomination to actually host this conference, this Congress. It was a wild ride, but at least we got here. I'm very happy that these past 3 days. We've discussed all the challenges that small-scale fishers are currently facing. I would also like to thank, apart from obviously TBTI and Vesna and Evan, who made the process so much easier, you too, Ratana. I'm very sorry that you weren't able to come here. I hope that in the next Congress that we'll hopefully have the opportunity to organize again, you would be able to attend here. And I would also like to thank all the volunteers, Paula and Thomas and Gabriella, Martina and Martez, of course. And also big well done to the technical team, the video conferencing and the streaming and the sharing of the Zoom PowerPoints and all the audiovisual equipment that they brought. And thank you to all the presenters and panelists who made this conference more interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That was very well said, and there's no need to, I mean, of course, we can continue to congratulate each other and also express our gratitude for the wonderful hosting of the Congress by our Maltese colleagues. And the opportunity like this, the Congress only runs every 4 years, just so that you know, right? I mean, I should have said that 5 minutes ago, and somebody might want to say something, because in 4 years from now, we would meet again and trying to figure it out, right? Or look at what we have done in terms of progress that we make. And I think every time we get together, we are making progress. We are stronger together in terms of our voice, our understanding about what's going on. We are building good network and collaboration. We have been able to unpack a few things that are difficult to understand. We actually gaining knowledge. And also, I think we know what we need to do, even though we might not be able to articulate it quite well yet. For sure, we have received a lot of good feedback and many food for thought that we would continue to contemplate and deliberate. So this is not the end, of course, just like a good party does come to the end. This is one of those that continues, right? So we'll keep the momentum going. There will be proceedings, which we would then circulate and share. There would be follow-ups by other things. So if you have comments, if you by now you know that you are part of this to be global partnership. So we like you to be receiving newsletters and be part of this movement to really affect change in small-scale fisheries and continue to work together in order to really deliver what we are, many of us are good at many things, and we're just gonna work with whatever we can, bring our own perspectives and our best skill set and knowledge and make this happen together. So we will let you go and enjoy your dinner and sightseeing and whatever Malta has to offer. I apologize again for not being there. Thank you for your patience with this, but I think that the hybrid system actually works. And the audience, virtual participants, thank you for joining. So for everybody, have safe trip home. And if you are interested in joining the other two congresses, you can still participate if you like in Merida or in Cape Town. Otherwise, we'll see you in 4 years at the 5th World Small Scale Fisheries Congress, where we would announce. But of course, in the next between then, we hope that we would have opportunity to see you in other places. Thanks again for spending time with us and for all your effort and contribution. Bye-bye, everyone.